Thanks very much. That's my first slide covered. But I will start off by saying on the 3rd of January 2024, our chief executive was delighted to have an invitation from DEFRA to participate in the adaptation reporting pilot. On the 4th of January, Michael Keenlyside was equally as delighted to take on a shed load of new work. So that's the kind of humble beginnings that we started on. Can I have the next slide, please? So just introducing North Tyneside Metropolitan Borough Council. Same principles as a unitary authority, really. We've just got a fancier name. Some might disagree. Climate emergency declared in 2019. The first net zero action plan was compiled by myself and my manager at the time, Paul Nelson, who's kind of skyrocketed onto being a head of service, not on the basis of that climate emergency work though. And we report that annually to Cabinet, and we've just completed the 2025 kind of update to Cabinet, and there's some good progress being made. As an authority, we're CDP rated as A, and we've done that for the last 2 years, and we've just put our kind of submission in for this year. So fingers crossed. I think there's enough progress going on in a very small but beautifully formed borough council, metropolitan borough council, to kind of warrant that again. But I'll leave that to the experts to decide. We are part of the North East Combined Authority. And that kind of gives us lots of opportunities to kind of develop our net zero ambitions in the region, and also the climate adaptation stuff. However, saying that, in terms of the climate adaptation at a regional level, that particular piece of work hasn't started. So that's actually given us a bit of a kind of profile and a bit of a heads up as to what could be coming in terms of a regional collaborative approach. Next slide, please. I should also just add to that kind of slide that our elected mayor, Councillor Karen Clark, is also the portfolio holder for the combined authorities, home of green energy revolution. So that actually puts another layer of kind of exposure on North Tyneside Council to help shape what the combined authority does. So it's a great accolade. Why climate adaptation? I won't go through this in any detail, but I'm sure you all recognise the kind of underpinnings there. Supporting our communities, thriving citizens, and successful places in terms of business, resilience, etc. There's some potential financial savings, which I'll kind of mention a little bit later. And also, we are a coastal authority, so we have responsibility for coastal protection and flooding, as many of you will as well, other than the coastal element, and air quality, and potentially, as we've learned today, that kind of adaptation reporting. Next slide, please. So our work so far in adaptation, pre-2024, I've got the great gift of longevity in this field of work, nearly been involved in it for 30 years now. We had, as some as you will kind of recognise, National Indicator 188, which was a report we compiled annually to DEFRA to kind of demonstrate in simple terms how we were progressing against climate adaptation. And we started to do that in the first year of my tenure with North Tyneside Council, and we were starting to do great guns. And then DEFRA said, thanks very much, but we don't need it anymore. So I was sorely disappointed, but it's come back round. Stay in one place long enough, and I'm sure you know the rest of that story. Moving up swiftly to 2022, we were made aware of the Local Partnerships Adaptation Toolkit version 1, which I believe now has kind of gone into version 3 or 4, and that was a great kind of revelation and helped us kind of identify 5 key services in our authority that could be affected from the associated climate impacts. And we worked with those 5 services in a bit of a pilot back in 2022, just to establish what the high level risks were. We never took that any further forward than trying that pilot and said, actually, this works and we could use this for something in the future. And of course, the future is here now. So as I said, we were invited by DEFRAT to kind of participate in the pilot testing, and actually I've quite enjoyed that whole process. And I'm not going to repeat what previous speaker said, but actually having the DEFRA badge on an email does not open some doors for you. And also I'd kind of say we're a small authority, and actually I know quite a lot of people. In fact, I pretty much know uh, the majority of the key officers involved in helping us develop this approach. So yeah, familiarity, I guess, and kind of local knowledge goes a long, long way. The value for money exercise that was referenced by Katie, I've just completed the kind of final tranche of that and the review of what the consultants have written about us. It's really all very valuable and very supportive, and kind of leading on to that, and the development of the draft strategy was great. That's on our website, by the way, if anybody wants to look. It's not very complicated. It's not very long. It kind of just focuses purely on the 5 service areas. So this wasn't a borough-wide climate adaptation strategy and action plan, because we needed to kind of relearn what we thought we knew from back in the day, 2009, 10, etc. And actually, the learning from that process and the kind of internal publicity that was generated from it has actually raised the profile of adaptation risk to the corporate risk register. Our net zero kind of work was already on there, but we quickly realized, as most of you will have done or will do, that actually adaptation needs to stand on its own 2 feet. It's separate from net zero for many, many reasons. So yeah, after a few kind of conversations and some facts shared with our corporate risk team, then we're actually on that risk register. And again, that kind of provides another bunch of work for me to kind of work through and ensure that we kind of meet the objectives in there. Fortunately as well, or unfortunately, we had a number of heat waves this year, as you may remember, and there was a pilot scheme which was being promoted by the UK Health Security Agency on hot weather and impacts on vulnerable communities. So, if we hadn't have done the adaptation strategy, I probably wouldn't have been cited on that. But actually, I felt that was a really good way of testing some of the kind of principles I'd kind of outlined with those. Well, one particular service in our strategy, which was adult social care and children's services, which are under one directorate. And actually, the timing of that couldn't have been better. And we really kind of did learn of some of the gaps within those services, and it just strengthened the kind of the actions that we need to take to kind of address some of these risks that we thought probably were covered, but clearly not. One of the kind of things that we did discover on our journey through 2024 is actually, if you're trying to build a business case for climate adaptation, as you will know, you need some facts and figures in terms of how much does this sort of stuff cost in terms of dealing with an incident of extreme weather, and also the kind of recovery process. And unfortunately, our research showed us there's not a lot of information or kind of tools out there to kind of help local authorities build that profile, again, to kind of feed into a business case development. And that's where the SLIC project came into being. We kind of did find some colleagues in Leeds University who were willing to kind of lead on a little bit of a pilot test, just to see if we could capture some money to enable us to build a bit of a platform for recording financial impacts to help build those business cases. We do know there's a couple around the country, but yeah, we were limited in what we could do that. Next slide, please, because I'm conscious of the time. Key lessons, short and sweet. At the start of this process, there's a shed load of information out there, and actually it became quite bewildering looking at all of the modeling. And I think my first lesson that I'd share is let the climate scientists do the modeling, but actually just look at the scenarios that they're producing at the end of it, because that's what you need to go into battle with your kind of colleagues in other services. Give them the Billy Basic stuff. What is this impact on my service? This is it. And that kind of goes a long way, and it'll stop your head hurting, which it did for me. Not all the risks will be yours. I think one of the important lessons that we learned when we did some consultation was that there are interdependency risks and cascading risks. And whilst you think that you've got a great big list of kind of risks, not all of them are your responsibility. Bit of a conversation, bit of consultation will kind of unpick that. The risks that are yours, I think, just as our previous speaker said, you need to kind of look at those in some reality and actually start and prioritize. There's a really good pro forma that we got from DEFRA, very complicated in its first look, but actually you kind of identify out of the 120 risks we identified, I think there was about 12 or 15 that were high priority. You cannot deal with all of the risks. You need to deal with the high priorities. And then there's a kind of separate page, which isn't on that slide, which kind of looks at those in the 2030, 2050, 2080 scenarios. And also I'll kind of just share with you, nobody's got a crystal ball. And this is only model data looking further forward than the sort of next 5 years. And you've got to take that with some form of reality. Finally, number 4, the tools that do exist. I'm not going to go into that because our next speaker, Derek's going to cover that. But actually, there's some really good tools, but I will kind of let you know none of them are going to give you the answers that you really need. You've got to do some kind of grafting. You've got to work with your colleagues to get that. Even AI kind of produce what is required in terms of the decision making. But they're a really good start to kind of that journey. Next slide, please. What's next for us? 2 key actions. We are about to undertake a much broader stakeholder engagement suite of activities in the autumn to broaden out that action plan from being a purely council-centric one. That was the tester for us. We know what we can do now. And also, I'll go back to the point, we need to find a mechanism that can record the financial impacts of not only dealing with extreme weather events in real time, but actually how we cover the kind of recovery at the end of that. That still is a massive gap. And I think that's one that's shared with many, many others. Next slide, please. There we go. I think
Dan,
that's me.
thank you so much.
That's me done.